So a lot of you guys have said, bring Lesley back on, bring Lesley back on. As you guys know, she's our partner. We've been together 22 years, and she basically runs the company and makes us all look good. So I asked her, I said, why don't we talk today about, property management? We always talk about buying, and we always look at the math. And I know you're very, 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 very good at this stuff. And of course, Lesley is on our investment committee calls, like the one we had yesterday, which
every week
we go over, 6 to 8 deals every single week, and we're making offers, and she's right there looking at the numbers and all that kind of stuff. But today, we're actually going to be flying to Austin, Texas, and we're going to do some site selection. We're also going to take a look at some properties that we own and also some other properties that we might be looking at buying. But specifically, she's going to go pop in on our staff on a property that we already bought. Now, the reason why I wanted her on this today is because, as you guys know, all this hard work of buying something, and you put together a business plan, and then you raise money from people. And these investors, what do they want? They want a return. They want their money. They want us to deliver money on whatever we get from them based on a business plan. So Lesley's job is to fly to these places, make sure that we're on business plan. And of course, you're not going to be seriously, income could be higher, it could be lower, expenses could be higher, it could be lower, capital expenses could be higher, they could be lower. So these are all manageable. And essentially, but we're still working toward the goal of the business plan, but things are not going to be perfect. Right?
Absolutely.
So all right. So I asked her to be on today so we can talk about what are some of the things that you do before you visit, during the visit, and after the visit, when you're actually managing the manager. So this is, we have our own management company, so it's a little different, but doesn't really matter if you guys have a management company or you own your management company, or maybe you're doing it yourself and you just need a few tips. But let's talk first. Let's break it up into those 3 categories. What's the first thing that you do before the prep? Because we're leaving today.
We are.
We're flying to Austin, and you're going to be boots on the ground.
Right.
What are you preparing for? What are you bringing?
So before I ever go to a property, I've got to understand where the numbers are. One of the first things I look at is the property's financial over the last month, 3 months, year, just to see where we stand and where they're tracking so far in whatever month I'm going in.
So let's stop there real quick. So this is, guys, this is the math. Everybody can say whatever they're going to do. The texts, the emails, and all that stuff is irrelevant. The financial is the report card, period. It is. It is what it is. So you're going to take, I'm sure you're going to take January financials, February financials, maybe December financials, year-end financials. You're going to pull them out, and you're going to be looking at the income. You're going to be looking at the rents. You're going to be looking at the vacancy. You're going to be looking at the other income. You're going to be looking at the expenses, right?
All of it. Line
item by line item. And so you prep all this before. This is how you manage. You're actually managing to numbers. You have your business plan at the same time, right?
Well, it's important to look at the numbers. One thing I've loved about this industry is how much you can get by looking at the numbers. You know what to do when you get there. There's like a whole story that it tells you.
Well, that's the part that
right?
a lot of you may not understand. Like, that's what I love. Like when we get these financials on, let's say,
they don't lie.
Something we're buying, it's like a curse now. I mean, I can literally look at something and I go,
they've got a management problem.
They've got high delinquencies, or they got a spending problem, or they got a CapEx problem, or they got a roof problem, or they got a plumbing problem. It's all in the numbers, and it's basically a guide, right?
Absolutely.
So you got to start there. So now you've got the numbers. What specifically are you going to be focused in on this visit?
Well, so what I want to look at for this visit is how our rents compare to what we underwrote in the business plan.
Nice.
But also the budget that's prevailing, but the market. What's the market doing? We don't set the business plan and forget about it. Of course, we're always looking at it, benchmarking it against it. But like you said before, it's never right. It's
Right.
your best guess at the
Yeah.
time, and you do a lot of homework to develop them, but you got to respond to what the market's doing.
So there's three things. You have what the existing leases are. Let's say you add them all up, and that's a number. So those are the actual leases for the actual tenants plus the vacancies, right? That's what we call the actual market rent, right?
Yep.
Okay, then you have the business plan rents, which hopefully are a little higher. Hopefully you underwrote them a little bit higher because that's what investors want. They want to see some kind of value add. So you have those rents that were based on the time you bought it. And then you have the market today, which can be very different, right? Sometimes they can be higher. Sometimes they can be lower. Sometimes vacancy can be higher. Sometimes vacancy can be lower. But you're going to go unit by unit,
Type by type.
by type, and actually, again, roll it up to a math. So let's just, for argument's sake, let's say that the actual rents were $100,000 at the time we bought it. The business plan rents were $110,000, let's say. So we were trying to grow our rents by, say, $10,000. And then the market rents could be $120, right? They can be that different. You can have three different, but the good news is if the market rents are way above your business plan rents, then that's a good thing. If market is below it, it's probably going to be a little tougher, right?
It is. You might have to turn some different dials if that happens. If the market shifts downward, there are things you can do to still have
Let's
income.
talk about that. What would you do if market rents were down?
Mitigate vacancy.
There you go.
Oh my gosh.
Cash flow up, vacancy low, right?
How do you keep the occupancy as high as possible?
Yeah, so you can do that through renewal of the existing people at the existing rates because you're trying to manage vacancy, right? You're also trying to keep your cash flow high.
Right. Well, it also allows you to keep concessions low, meaning move-in discounts. So if the occupancy is high enough or balanced with the market, your concessions or move-in discounts go away.
Good, yeah.
So there are ways around that. But, if you have a business plan and you stick to just what you had underwritten, you're going to miss an opportunity.
Yeah. And we see that mistake a lot. And sometimes we try to buy those buildings, and pull that money out tax-free. So we have a plan, and that is in the business plan. So we're trying to manage to the plan, right?
Exactly. So watching those the rents on a weekly basis, the property managers have got to do that. One of the things I ask them to have available is their most recent market survey. After looking at the financials, and we identify where that top line market rent needs to be. We really go through it unit type by unit type to make sure that, let's say a one bedroom, we're sitting on a lower rent and a two bedroom's higher. You can't look at the overall numbers and say, well, you're right in line with market.
That's right. Yeah. So basically what you have to do, the only way to really do this is to get in your damn car, drive to another property, walk in, grab a brochure, find out what the rents are, and don't be lazy and sit behind a computer, right? Because things are happening daily, weekly, and they might not necessarily be showing up, and they might not be accurate in the website itself. So these numbers are moving a lot.
They do,
especially when something new gets added. So one of the things that can disrupt a market is a new property, right? So you can drop 150 units, 100 units, 200 units, 300 units in a general area. And all of a sudden you have a lot of one bedrooms, a lot of two bedrooms, and those kinds of things can disrupt a market, right?
It can. I mean, you made a good point about not sitting behind a computer. Right now, so many people are pricing their units. If they've got very low availability, they're going to push those rents up so high on one unit. And if there are multiple units, sometimes you can say, okay, I'm going to set my rents at that high rent, and then all of a sudden your vacancy starts to grow. If you're not really watching where the rents go on an average basis when they're renting those units, that you could end up pushing your rents too high. Ultimate barometer, though, is watching the occupancy as compared to your peers.
Yeah, that's an important part. And the other thing is managing the cash flow is very different than managing for a sale or a refinance. So in a lot of cases when we're just talking about market rent, we might just be, let's try to keep it 96, 97, 98% economic occupancy, and just try to keep that cash flow high, because again, we're distributing to the investors. And then when you're ready and you're, let's say, want to refinance, I'm sitting down with Lesley almost a year in advance, right? So if we want to refinance a project, now I know there's interest rate risk and all these other things, but we're sitting down way in advance and we're saying, hey, we want to refinance this property next year. So let's create a strategy where we can grow the net operating income by growing the rents over time, maybe even pushing the market a little bit and creating vacancy. So oddly enough, we have this conversation a ton. Let's create vacancy and set the market so that, because when you go to the bank and you're actually going to refinance, they refinance based on the numbers that you have at the time. And if your rents are $200, $300, $400, even $500 under market, then you're going to get a significantly less in the loan proceeds, right?
For sure.
So,
for sure.
Yeah. And this, the management of the rents and the management of how you rent and release and renew, it's a science, and it should not be taken lightly.
Well, and in order to even renew a lease, you have to know where the market is at all times.
Yeah.
And so, you have to give them notice well in advance anyway. So you have to be prepared first by looking at that. But we look at, lease expirations and when they hit and what our plan is to bring them either to market or close to market, depending on which asset we're talking about.
Yep.
The strategy. But right now we're pushing really hard on renewals.
Yeah, we are. Yeah. And I think that a lot of people don't look at vacancy as an expense. It's a loss of income, true, but you really should be looking at it as an expense.
Well, what you said before about economic occupancy, I think, is how people should really measure. You can look at your physical occupancy is, you got one unit, it's occupied, it's 100% full. But if that unit this month, it has, let's say they move out a week, into that month, you're at 75% occupancy, 75% economic occupancy. So really the difference between, your physical and your economic is just the excuses as to why you didn't collect the entire amount of rent that you could have. So vacancy, concessions,
delinquents,
bad debt. Yeah, you name it.
Yeah, it's a really good point, guys. Like, I know a lot of people that, you could be 100% occupied and be collecting 75 or 80%, right? It blows my mind. People do this all the time, and most of that, we don't have time in this show to get into that, but it's crazy. So, all right, so I think we beat up the income piece. Now, also in the financials, what else are you looking at before your visit?
Oh, a delinquency report.
Okay, yeah.
I want to look at all of that. I want to look at expenses and see if there are any anomalies or issues related to that. What kind of capital improvements we've got planned for the quarter of the year.
Yep. And on this one, it's a lot, right? We've got, because when I was there last, we had people on the roofs and ripping the roofs apart.
Everything's
so it's in the millions, repositioned. Right? Yeah, so we're doing millions of renovations, and some of you do that, the value add piece. So you're going to basically just scrub it all down, sit down with the manager, go through all the line items, and for sure, of all this stuff, there's going to be 20 to 30% stuff that are going to be red flags, right? This is normal.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. So, you get yourself prepared before you go, and you set out when you get there to really, one, get those answers quickly, but knock on doors, see what's going on. I mean, when I look at a delinquency report, if we've got high delinquency, sometimes I'll have the property team members send a notice to the resident saying, we're going to come in and inspect your unit.
Yeah.
Making sure the unit's still occupied, just trust but verify that the team's managing that properly.
And the state laws are different everywhere, but I think in Texas they're 48
1 day.
1 day, 24 hours. Yeah, in some areas there's 48. So you have to do this properly. You can't just walk into people's units. You have to follow the landlord-tenant law in all cases. But so this is all part of the pre-prep, right? Right.
Yeah. So if you go, then you don't miss an opportunity to knock on that door, talk to that resident, find out what's going on. If they're at home, if they're not, making sure the unit's still occupied.
Yeah, good point.
Because the sooner you find out if it's vacant, you can get that unit turned and ready for a new renter, and hopefully it's at a higher rent. In this case, it definitely is. We're waiting for a few people to move out after the moratorium, is up now, waiting for court cases, and we're asking them to leave.
Yeah.
If they can't pay, or working out payment arrangements with them.
So anything else on your pre-prep, pre-visit?
Other than that, review just mostly financial, and looking at the occupancy trend, where it's headed. Leasing and traffic is important to look at.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick. So obviously, if you don't have people coming, it's hard to fill a vacancy, and there's a lot of ways to fill vacancies, a lot, and there's probably way more than you think. A lot of people just automatically think they have to spend money, but it's not true, is it?
No,
you do not have to spend a lot of money to fill a property. You just have to be creative. Let's talk about that real quick, because if you can't fill a property, you're not going to have the rent. And if you're going to spend a lot of money to do it, you're going to have that expense. Either way, it's a squeeze, right?
Right.
So let's talk about some creative ways that you might be thinking about, and will you be sitting down with the manager and you're brainstorming, right? So what are some things that you would talk to them about?
So one, we look at what's on notice to vacate, what's vacant now. We want to know what kind of unit types are coming available. And
that's important.
Yeah.
If there's a lot of threes, it's one strategy. If they're ones or studios, it's another, right?
100%.
Big time difference.
All of our properties have internet sites, and we manage all of that ourselves. So we make sure that, if we have to have some kind of a push on a unit type, we might do a small special or make mention of the availability, but making sure that we're marketing those units, have something even out at the property, whether it be signage out at the property, making sure that the units are ready. God,
boy, this is
that's
a big
the
one.
biggest advertisement there is.
Like, listen, guys, there's these little bandit signs that we just stick out in front, say, hey, we have a vacancy, and that can actually be a game changer. Can be, depending if you have drive-by traffic or not.
In this day and age, it's everything.
Yep.
So many people are looking for places to live.
Yep.
And if you're not advertising in some way, being notorious about it, even if it's balloons out front, they know
whatever it is.
Anything.
Yep.
Resident referrals are another thing. Getting other folks in the area to help and spread the word that you have the availability.
And the worst thing you can do, if there's one pro tip, is to show that unit when it's not ready to be shown, right?
Oh, never do that.
This is a big deal because, people think about yourself. Like when you get a rental car and it's nasty inside, right? It's the same. You walk into a unit and it's not ready. And it's just, and the manager's like, oh, well, we're going to paint, we're going to do this. And you're like, okay, well, I'm going to keep shopping around. It's really, really important that you have rent-ready units for them to see, and you're putting your best foot forward, right?
That's by far the best advertisement. That in the outside of the property, it has to look beautiful, clean, well kept, and you have to have a team of folks to help you, making sure it's groomed well.
Yep.
It's best advertisement.
And if you don't have a team, you just need to make sure that your landscaper or you are making sure that there's no trash out there. The landscaping's nice. Think of a single woman. Let's say, they're thinking of safety. They're thinking of all those kinds of things. You need to put yourself in the shoes of the people that are walking in.
That's a good point,
right? And that's how you should be doing, just like you would. And so there's so many times, like when we'll drive these properties that we haven't bought yet, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like people are living this way, and the management's allowing it.
Right, right.
It's just some of these places are nasty.
Curb appeal.
Oh,
it has to be taken care of. But the safety, I think, driving the property at night, making sure
Yep.
that the lighting's sufficient and
The landscape's cut back so that all of that stuff is super important.
well, and another form of advertising is making sure you take care of your existing residents. Work orders, are they handled quickly, and are they waiting for anything to be done? Talk to the residents.
Yep.
It's one of the things I love to do when I go to the how are things going here? What could we do?
Yep. I know, I've been doing these Airbnbs, renting actually, like in places I want to go. I love reading the comments because they say, this owner was very responsive. We this happened, and they responded within 30 minutes or an hour. Now I know this is Airbnb, but the point is, it's a customer service issue. So you have to portray these kinds of things when you're renting, right?
Yeah, and it's a guideline for you to follow. I mean, if you want to know how people see your property, look it up, look up the reviews, and respond to it. It's okay. Things happen. It's how you deal with them, I think, that's most important. And so
I agree. So now we land, we go to the property, and now it's the day of.
Right.
So what are you doing? What's the first thing you do? What's your routine when you actually visit a property?
It's greeting the team. Talking and saying hello to the team, finding out how they are. One of the best things to do to get them to be open, transparent, is to understand that we care about them as individuals. But greeting the team, and we start by walking the property.
Yep. And by the way, if you're self-managing, maybe it's just looking in the mirror and saying, "Hey, you're awesome."
Hey, let me take you on a walk.
If it's if you're managing a manager, my expectation would be that you make sure that they meet you there, and you have all this stuff ready for them. But you're also being the same, extending the same kind of generosity to them. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Let's work together on this, right?
Right.
So in our case, we have team members that work for us. So then you walk vacants.
Every vacant should be walked, and I like to look at the number of days that the units are vacant before I come. I forgot to mention that.
Okay.
So that if there's a unit that says it's ready and it's been sitting and on the market for a while, I want to go take a look at that with the team and analyze how it looks.
This is why I mentioned the vacancy is an expense. So let's say your rent's $1,000. And you have 30 days in a month. Pretty easy to figure that out. $33 a day you're losing. So if you have a vacancy 10 days, it's $330 plus the cost to paint it, plus the cost to advertise if you do that, plus the cost to clean it, plus the cost to for the carpets and the floors and all those other things. So a vacancy can be expensive, and it can be very expensive each day. You should be thinking that way. That's how we try to think, is every day we have a vacancy, it's an expense. It's a reduction of income, right?
Right. We like to get into those units before they become vacant. Resident typically gives notice to vacate.
Yeah.
So walking those units ahead of time gives you forewarning as to what's
you want to be
done.
like, there's a refrigerator. Oh, now there's not a refrigerator. Those are important things, right? By the way, those things have happened, of course. We have all kinds of tenant stories. We should actually do a whole show.
Oh no, I know, it would be great.
Oh my gosh. But yes, going in and looking at, sometimes I remember, like, whoever we go into a unit, there's just like a mattress on the floor and a book. Do you remember that one?
I remember a lot of them like that.
I'm just going to throw a couple out here.
Oh, no.
There was one, we walked in, there was a baby crib. Do you remember this one?
I totally do.
And a stripper pole. Swear to you.
And a target for shooting. Remember? It's all in one photo.
Oh, we have the photo.
I have photographic evidence.
Yeah, so anyway, so the point is, well, that would be an easy turn though. Just a few things to take out. But the point is, and we've also gone into units where there's been, they're growing things, if you know what I mean, and it's a mess. So It can be a very wide range of things. The point is, when they move you're going to have some kind of an expense, and you need to know, especially now with labor and material issues that we're having.
Order ahead.
Order ahead, right. So what we're trying to do now to be proactive is another pro tip for you guys is if somebody gives you notice, you say, thank you. I'm going to go inspect the unit with you so we can see if there's any damage or anything like that and set the expectation for them because there might be stuff. I mean, they might have parties. There might be holes in the wall. There might be appliances missing.
Oh.
There's There might be doors that have holes in them and ripped off the. We've had all this stuff.
Well, it's a good time to lay out your expectations about how you expect to have the unit back. They sign a lease when they move in, but it's like their memory is gone.
Oh yeah, we had like a pet sitters. We had one guy cut a hole in the floor and took the oven racks out of the oven and was cooking on the floor. like really, and. So anyway, there's all kinds of things that can happen, and obviously that took a little longer to fix. But these are things that you can be proactive on before they move, right?
Right. And knowing then having the parts and supplies on hand, you can mitigate the vacancy. And in some cases, if you don't have staff or you have too many units to get ready all at one time, sometimes it's best to plan to bring in third-party help to mitigate that vacancy
we do that
as well.
all the time. Yeah. So you're always managing again to cash flow. So think of 3 different buckets. You think of the maintenance bucket. Do they have all the supplies? Is the labor there? For the unit turns and the exterior and the interior. Think of the ops bucket, which is, okay, who's in charge of this whole thing, the income, the expense, and all that kind of stuff. And then you need to think of the marketing bucket, which is how do we fill those, and they all need to work together as we try to keep the occupancy high, keep the cash flow high, right? Right. So you're looking at all those things at once.
Yeah, and it's really so much better to do it when you're at the property, and engaging with the site team. And
it's important to have boots on the ground. Like, you're going to find stuff. You're going to be disappointed. I guarantee you guys, this happens. Even in our company, as tightly managed as we are and the culture's high, people are tired. They're working hard. Labor's rough, supplies are rough, everybody's working, it feels like they're at capacity at
those
all
that
time.
are working are at capacity.
So sometimes you walk a unit, it might be vacant for 30 days. We could take a hammer or we can say
help with a solution.
Yeah, how do we fix this? So that's the point of a site visit, right? Is things unravel at the properties all the time.
Right.
All the time.
It starts with having the right people on site. You got to have people who are really open, moldable. It's attitude is first, really. Attitude and being forthright. And the rest just comes,
Yep. So we're trying to mitigate vacancy, walking all the vacants. The other one, I know, the sneaky one that you always like is looking at the maintenance work orders. Let's talk about that. Because, again, now these are the people that live there. And so a big mistake for a lot of management people is they're like, they're in our units. We're going to focus only on the people that aren't in our units, not the ones that are giving us money. We're going to focus on the people that haven't given us money. It's goofy. It should be the other way around. We should be focusing on our customer and those are the people that are saying, hey, I've got a toilet overflowed, or I have this, or I have that. So let's talk about that, because that's an important piece, the retention piece.
Right. No, we're lucky to have a computer system or software system that tracks all of that for us. But before computers, and I've been in this industry for like 30 plus years.
You're only 30. How could that be?
I love you.
I know.
We used to keep track of them just on a carbon work order ticket. That is one of the best things you have. So you have a ticket. If you do it electronically, even better. To be able to analyze, okay, how many of these were written as compared to how many are done, and actually picking up the phone. We expect our team members to pick up the phone and follow up on those things. And while you're at the site, talk to some of the residents to find out how they're feeling about things.
It's important that people, they're paying you to maintain a place. And if you don't and they move, that's on you. It really is. It's on the people that manage. And so what happens is Very rarely do people point fingers at themselves. They're like, oh, they moved. Why did they move? Oh, they relocated.
He
or
moved
they
out of
bought a
town.
house. Or, I'm like, yeah, that's a bunch of BS. They moved because you're incompetence on fixing the things that they wanted, right?
Yeah.
That's really kind of the underpinning issue on a lot of vacancies and a lot of move outs. People that are happy. We were just talking the other day. We have a property, a senior property, and we have a tenant that's been there 30 years.
Yeah, it's at more than one of our senior sites, actually. 30 years.
Yeah. So guys, like, if people are not going to move if they're happy, generally, and so if there's a high turnover, it's a red flag.
Well, and here's a point about work orders. If you're not getting a work order from somebody that's been there for a long time, you should be reaching out to them.
That's another good point. Yeah. And the one thing, another pro tip, don't let the tenant paint or do their own maintenance, right? Like, trust me, we've had this problem. Like, we have this beautiful, let's say, eggshell paint on the unit when they moved in, and it might be purple when they move out, right?
Takes 5 coats of paint to cover something like that.
So, these are things that you learn over time. You need to have a system for that. Okay, what else do you do when you're on site? Obviously, you're trying to drive traffic there, right? You're obviously working with the maintenance. You're working on the vacancies. Anything else?
I like to look at any open AP that they currently have
payable
at the site.
Yeah. So bills. This is bill. These are bills.
Some red flags would be like dated invoices that might be sitting there, making sure you can kind of see that in the financials anyway. If you're looking at a current financial and it's January and you have October invoices in there, you go to the site and you say, hand me all your invoices.
You got a problem.
Yep.
Yeah, because now you have a couple problems. One, you have a manager or a management company that's not paying bills for you. You're also creating a reputation issue among the service workers, the contractors, the subcontractors, some of these hardworking people, and a lot of times they're small businesses. So, so you can't stiff a carpet cleaner. You can't stiff people, but it happens, right? And trust me, guys, they talk.
They do.
Right.
They do. You got to have good vendor relationships, especially now with as difficult as the labor shortage is.
So, that's a good one because if they will go just like you would, they're going to go to the people they like and the people that pay them on time and the people that do what they're going to say, and they're going to avoid. And then those people what's going to happen is you're going to be moving down the list and the time frame, which is going to create vacancy and all those other kinds of things happen as a result of inefficiencies.
For sure.
On that turnover, maintenance, cleaning, right? It's a big deal. So payment to your vendors is extremely important.
It is. And while you're at the site, another one of the big things to do is not just look for current issues, but look at what kind of preventative maintenance is being done.
Yeah.
If you don't have a preventative maintenance schedule, you should have one. It's usually seasonal, and it's got to be done before you have issues. HVACs have got to be cleaned. The coils need to be cleaned, and there needs to be preventative maintenance on a lot of the property.
A lot of people skip right over this part. They wait for something to break and they fix it. And there are a lot of things you can do on the preventative side, right? Right.
I think, between certainly HVAC, but roofs are another massive area. I mean, everybody knows roofs are one of the most expensive replacements that you have at the property. So, making sure gutters are clean, making sure trees are off the buildings, limbs are away from the gutters if you have them.
And sidewalks with the tree roots.
Trip hazards.
Trip hazards.
Very good.
Those are good ones. Let's talk about, like, who moved in. Like this one's gotten us a bunch. So, like, there's a inherent pressure on a property manager to keep the occupancy high.
Right.
So if you're the owner or and you're managing a management company, or you are the management company, or you're that, there's there's a tendency to want to fill that vacancy. I get that. So you have to create a resistance around criminal credit, background checks, even sex offender checks. We do those. You want to, because this is a big issue. I found a lot of people, as they're trying to pursue occupancy, and they slam somebody in there. So when you go to a property, like on a property like this, it's 450 units. We could easily have 30, 40 move-ins a month, right? So let's say, what's the last time you were there? Maybe a month, let's say. Okay, so imagine that. So you are now going to go take a look at, what do you look at on move-ins? Because this is a great way to have a great conversation with your manager. It's like, why did you move this person in, right? So let's talk through that.
Well, fortunately, we've got a criteria that we set up before we buy any property. We always set up our criteria, which, we verify rental history. We make sure that they're making sufficient amount of money compared to their rent, so the income to rent ratios, and credit background, criminal payment history, that kind of thing. And so all of that's automated for us. When a prospective resident applies, they do that electronically, and we use a third party to approve them based on the criteria. So our managers don't have the ability to approve.
This is important, guys, because you can get into some discrimination issues.
You sure can.
So you want to, if you can, you want to outsource this. So the tenant pays for their own credit report, and the service is not that expensive. But it removes a lot of liability from you. You create up your criteria on the minimum that you would allow. And if they don't fall in that criteria, you're treating everyone the exact same.
Right. So our system locks it so that our teams can't move somebody in if they're denied. Period. So they can't get keys. They can't be moved into the system. But they do have to verify rental history. So that's something mechanical that we have to watch. And but making sure the criteria is right. If we run into too many evictions or too many slow payers, you have to question, is the criteria right?
I remember I was talking to the people that were doing our criteria, and running all this for our residents, and I said, so what do you look for? She said, what I always look for are the people that always want to pay all their rent up front, right?
Right, or when you find that they owe money to another landlord, it should be a no-go.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a red flag always, but you have to trust but verify. So, in our senior communities, that would not be a red flag. But in, something else, it could be. So anyway, these are things that you learn as a property manager. But also, if you guys are managing something from afar, and you have a management company doing it, or you're doing it, you really gotta scrutinize who you're putting into your unit. There's a lot of time and effort on getting someone out. If it doesn't work out, there's a lot of time and effort on moving someone in, and the vacancy and all the costs associated with that. And so you're basically turning a unit twice and having somebody in there that might not be necessarily desirable. They can chase other tenants out.
I was just going to say that.
That's the other right? I mean, we have a lot of situations like that, right?
Yeah, you gotta go with your gut on it. Stick to it, not only from a fair housing standpoint, but like you said, save yourself.
Guys, think about prostitution, drug dealing, those kinds of things. Those are real, and those people can pay rent. And we've had that happen. We've had people move in, and so it's part of the management, and obviously you have all this in your lease and stuff, but not everyone is that, hey, I got two people working 9 to 5 and they're going to pay their rent on time. It's not that way. You get everyone, you have to treat them equally and the same, and then you got to manage it later. But if you have a situation, when we've had these, where there's prostitution, let's say, or drug dealing, or who knows what else, domestic violence, all that stuff, it's disruptive to the neighbors. And we've had a sex offender move in before.
We have
at properties, and they flyer the place, they flyer the neighborhood. Hey, there's a sex offender moving in. So sex offenders are supposed to register in the state that they move to, but sometimes they don't.
Yep.
So, there's things that happen, and that is very disruptive, obviously, to an area, right?
Well, yeah, and you have to have your lease. It has to be very clear about what you'll allow. So if that happens to you, you could easily get them out as long as you have the lease that says it's a crime-free community.
Yeah.
And you move to get them out as quickly as possible, so you're not chasing off the good residents.
Don't use a off-the-shelf lease. Each state and city actually has their own laws,
Right.
And you have to make sure that you're using something that's been thoroughly. When we first started in this business, I think our lease was like 2 pages.
It was
front and back.
Yep.
What is it now?
It's like 12.
12 pages. Jesus. So that's
It's
like
12,
that's
highly
nuts.
vetted.
Oh my gosh. I'm sure all that came from you.
One really good resource for that is any local association.
Yeah, good
You can
point.
get your hands on
Yeah.
that really easily.
That's another good point. What I don't want to divert from this too far, but if people are managing a manager or managing them themselves, or wanting to create their own, what are some resources that they should go to, to do this?
Well, for us, any form we can receive through Blue Moon. It's a software that all of the local apartment associations subscribe to, and if you're a member, you have the ability to have access to that.
Point. So become a member of the management community.
That's available for multifamily as well as independent rental owners. They have resources and different opportunities to fight potential legislation as well.
That's another good one. Yeah, it's we're involved in all of that. The Texas Apartment Association, the Arizona Multi-Housing Association, and all the areas we're in. And we attend those kinds of things. There's education, there's lobbying at the state level. There's different policies and different things coming down in the different cities, right?
And if you don't know, that's no excuse.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So and that actually helped us during COVID.
For sure.
Because we were plugged into all that. And so what happened was when our residents were at home and they were having a tough time paying, then all of a sudden those same associations said, hey, these are some areas that your residents can go to help assist them in paying their rent, right?
For sure. Or even where we could go and apply on their behalf.
Yeah, which we did a lot.
A lot.
I mean, we did that for a lot of people.
A lot.
Okay, so now we've walked the property, we've met with the staff, you've gone over the marketing and all that stuff. Now what?
So there'll be some takeaways.
Yeah, so this is what you do on the flight back, right? So how do you make sure because we're big on documenting.
We are.
And closing the loop, we call it.
Right. Well,
right?
And it helps for clarity. That way nobody's confused about what the expectations were.
Yeah.
Property scorecard is one of the best things I think we've developed. Basically, post a property walk, we score each of the properties.
Yeah, 1 to 5.
1 to 5 on 10 categories.
Yep. Yeah, 1 to 5. If the property looks great, it gets a 5. If it's okay, it might get a 2 or a 3 or a 4, let's say. And we have 10 categories that we do. You want to walk through those?
Yeah, between curb appeal, the exterior condition of the property, interior, so the units and anything interior, office as well, staff, and how they look, how they respond,
customer service
openness,
stuff.
customer service, visibility of the property, and the security of the property. So it's really important to hit that day, night. I love going overnight to make sure that I can go and visit the property.
Yeah, which is what you're doing this time.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, literally, she's spending the night so she can go to the property at night. That's actually part of the strategy.
Yeah. And anything deferred wise, any deferred maintenance, any resident occupancy issues, or resident satisfaction issues. Like I said, I love to talk to residents when I go to the property and get their feedback. And there's always a grain of truth there. And sometimes there are great stories too, but always opportunities. And budget performance. Like how are they performing to that underwriting for the business plan and the property's budget? So they get an overall score.
And we'll put these up on the screen for you guys so you can take a look at that. And, I know this doesn't apply to all of you, but just take the categories that do and just, take a critical look at your own self if you're managing, or somebody else. And it doesn't have to be, super complicated. You just need to literally, the difference. I mean, it's the same. Like if you go to a mall or you go to a restaurant and you have good service or bad service, it's that. So, right?
Right.
And then also, we have our own properties where, I have this list, Ross has this list, David has this list, other people have this list, where we'll come back and it's not necessarily rate that well, right?
Right.
Things can go sideways. And but then that is a tool for Lesley then to go get on the phone. And, it really does take a village to manage some of these things, right?
It does. And there's no challenge that you can't overcome once you identify it.
Yep.
You can't overcome something you're burying your head in the sand about. So this is aimed at transparency, really being aware of what's happening, but working with the team that's there to resolve it until it's done.
Yep. So when we leave a property, we'll send an email or some kind of follow-up to the manager, and it could say something like this. Your market rents aren't to market. I expect you to make sure that this is fixed the next time I visit, as one. Your vacancies, let's say you had 10 and only 6 of them were ready. I would expect next time I come here that all 10 are ready. So these are the kinds of action steps that you would put in writing. Same thing on the staff. Maybe you had somebody that didn't show up, or you have some issues there. And same thing on the maintenance side. The maintenance guys might not feel supported. They don't have the tools that they need.
Right.
The AP we mentioned, the condition of the property, the lighting of the property. So these are obvious things. The gates are broken. The lights don't work. These are all things that would go on this list.
Right.
And basically, you're documenting that visit. Right?
For sure.
Then when you go back on whatever the next visit is, which could be in a week, could be in a month, could be whatever.
You never know.
Yeah, it just depends on the severity of what you find. And, right? I mean, as you guys know, it's the 80-20 principle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, 20% of your properties take 80% of your time. And it's true in our case too, right? There are things that happen. And they will continue to happen. They're people issues, and largely, right?
Yeah.
Both from a resident standpoint and from a staff standpoint. So we're not perfect, but these tools, hopefully they helped you guys. They're important. And then you can take that list to the property the next time. You pull it out, and this now all of a sudden starts to become the document that you need for changing your manager, changing your management company, or supporting your manager, giving them a bonus, giving them a gift card, can work the opposite too.
Reward.
Right? Yeah,
right.
Thank you, guys. Nice job. The first visit wasn't great. Second visit was awesome. I'm going to buy you all lunch. Those are things that we do, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it doesn't always have to be negative, but you really do have to draw a line in the sand when you're managing a manager or managing a property yourself. That's what your customers are paying you for, right?
Right.
Any final words?
No, I should say I love this. One of my favorite things to do is get out into the field and work with the teams and help remove obstacles and really help them identify, grow their abilities.
That's a good point. That's what a management company does. It actually elevates the people, right?
Yeah. Without that kind of education, if you're not clear, it's unkind.
Yeah.
Right. So I think this gives them ultimate clarity and why I love it.